Well, the year ahead for the Springboks, I think, is unbelievably exciting, starting with that test series against Ireland on home soil. But they've got the Rugby Championship, they've got their tour at the end of the year as well. And we're getting closer to seeing what sort of direction Rassie Erasmus and a new coaching group is going to take this team in 2024. Because yesterday they released a squad, kind of their first proper squad, but it's still not a full squad because it doesn't have the Bulls players. Anyway, I'll get into all the different things, but it is a good opportunity to chat about the box. So welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, if you're clicking on a video for the first time, then hit subscribe, stay up to date with everything. Like the video as well. But most importantly, comment down below. So they released this new squad yesterday. What, or in particular, who excites you the most? 11 uncapped players in the team. One of the really intriguing things that I found over the 4-year cycle leading into the 2023 World Cup was how the Boks used that squad, how they would rest and rotate to bring players in, give them experience, which meant when we got to France, they were in a really good place to defend, and successfully it ended up being their title. So how they do that starting this year, I think, is really intriguing as well. So do let me know. I obviously see more of the South African players in kind of Challenge Cup, Champions Cup rugby, but for those of you that see a lot of them in the URC and will have a bigger sample size, in particular of those newer players, who would you say are the ones to really look out for and who could really make an impact? I think Sia Masuku potentially, but I'll get onto that a little bit later when I talk about fly halves. As I say, it's going to be a great year ahead. I've kind of touched upon it on this channel previously, fairly recently, but I can't remember what we call in the Northern Hemisphere the summer tours being any being as exciting as this Ireland-South Africa one, just because of the way that Ireland over the last few years have been the best team in the Northern Hemisphere. South Africa as the world champions, the kind of tension, particularly around the Six Nations time when there was a lot of conversations of this Ireland team being the best team in the world, and a lot of Springboks media and Springboks fans understandably said, well, hang on a minute, we won the World Cup a couple of months ago. They can't all of a sudden usurp us. So they're the second best team in the world in terms of the world rankings, and I think we are going to get some outstanding test matches. Whoever ends up winning, like the quality of game I think we will see is going to be awesome. I'm so excited for it, particularly as a neutral. But let's get into the Boks. The one thing I've always felt, and it links to what I just said about how they rotated their squad and brought through experience in the last World Cup cycle, is just feel like it works, just in terms of how they've had these alignment camps already this year. So they've had some in person, they've done some, I think, remote meetings and things like that. But it means that even a number of these players who haven't been capped before have a really good understanding of the environment they're going into and what's going to be expected of them, what they need to do to be successful in this Springboks team, who have been incredibly successful over the last, whatever it is, 8 years, or I guess not quite 8 years, but 5, 6 years. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing. And that's what gives me such faith, I think, in Erasmus and previous Nianaber when he was there, for the players that do come in, of those 11 names, that they will be able to make an impact on this team. That's something that always impresses me. I think particularly from my English point of view, where we're constantly talking about the wrestle between the Premiership clubs and the RFU and the amount of time they get and sharing resources. And I'm sure it's not absolutely perfect in South Africa because all countries have their own challenges, but it just feels like they deal with it quite well, essentially. But let's get into the actual team then. So as I said before, do comment, let me know, what do you make of it? What kind of stands out to you and who are you most excited by with those 11 uncapped players? It's a really interesting squad, isn't it? Because you've got the 11 uncapped players, and then you've got some guys like Peter Steff and Bongi Mbonambi and Andre Pollard, who are like, there's so much experience there and so much quality as well. Do you know, one of the things that stood out to me was probably some of the players that aren't there. So no Lekanyoam, I think he's injured, right? He's got a little injury at the moment. His form also hasn't been the best either. But you've got Damien Willemse, Kurtley Arendse, I saw picked up an injury this weekend in the URC playoffs. Kanan Moody is injured as well. So there are some quite experienced, very quality players missing. And in particular, what happens at 13 is of real interest to me. So Jesse Creel is still there, the kind of, a bit of a Swiss Army knife, isn't he? Not so much in, well, he does cover a number of positions, but the guy who I would say, isn't as glamorous as some of the other options in the Springboks team, but particularly last year was pretty crucial when Lekanyuan was injured and he came in, he does a job. So is he going to be the guy we see most regularly at 13? Or is there someone else, some of those uncapped players that may well come in? Because there are various different options there. Now, I would imagine they will rotate. So, for example, they've got this test at Twickenham against Wales, which I'm hoping to be at in a couple of weeks' time, where they won't be picking players that are based in the UK and Ireland or players in the Bulls squad as well. I think the UK and Ireland one is because it falls out of a test window. Wales have the same issue, actually, of missing some players. So both sides will be quite interesting for that one. So that I think they will rotate for. The Ireland series, I think, obviously is going to be their strongest team. But then what do they do in the Rugby Championship, and what do they do when they come up and face England at Twickenham and all those big kind of full-blooded games at the end of the year? So there are injuries there, which will be a concern. I've seen some Springbok fans saying the injuries are a bit of a concern. But that leads to opportunities. And it leads to guys like Kane Moody, for example, who wasn't that long ago. He was not part of this setup whatsoever. And now you look at him missing and you think, oh, that's a real shame for the Boks. So who's the next player to step up in their place? Some other things to kind of note, and this first one is particularly with my hat on from a Northern Hemisphere perspective and a Gallagher Premiership perspective, no Tyrone Green, who has been pulling up trees in the Premiership for the last few years. He has been a great fullback for Harlequins, consistently one of the best, if not the best fullback in the league, but he still doesn't get in, which I presume means he's not going to get picked at all, because even though they're not able to pick players for the Wales game, I suppose they could. I suppose he could come back in actually after that game, because he wouldn't be eligible anyway. Jasper Wiese's there and Andre Esterhuizen are there, but they have just left their clubs in the Premiership, so maybe it makes it a little bit different in terms of the access they get to them. I don't know, we'll see. Diamani as well, the number 8, is a guy that when I do see the URC always stands out. But it strikes me that maybe he just doesn't fit into the back row plans, what the Boks want from their back row, as good as he is. Is that fair? Should he be given an opportunity? It is an area that they're pretty stacked, but it doesn't seem like he's going to get in anytime soon. And I mentioned them there, but Pollard and Wiese are both training as well, but they won't be selected for the Wales test, is my understanding. The one other position that I wanted to mention, it's funny on these videos because you could end up going through the whole squad and speak about every position in the selection. Headaches, I suppose. That's where I rely on you for the comment section. The one other position I wanted to mention is fly half, which if you've watched the channel for a while, you'll know is something that I'm often talking about. The Springbok fly half jersey has been a topic of discussion for a long time as well. Marnie Libbok for a lot of last year. Pollard then comes back and is crucial in the World Cup. So where they fit. So you've got Libbok. We know what he brings. I think his form has been up and down. I think we've seen him have some great moments. There is still questions over his goal kicking. That is just the reality. Pollard there as well, who still has a major part to play in this team. He will absolutely be key in some of those big test matches against Ireland, against the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship. And this is where I come back to Sia Masuku, because he's been brilliant for the Sharks. And he was a pretty clutch goal kicker for them as well in some of those Challenge Cup victories and their run to winning it. So how much of an opportunity does he get? And where does Libbok fit into all of that? It's such an intriguing question, I think, because of how important fly half is as a position. And it's not, there's certain positions, like back row, for example, where sometimes it's just horses for courses. You have multiple different guys, they can all do different jobs, and you can select depending on what sort of game plan you want. Now, you can do that with fly half. Libbok and Pollard are quite good examples of that. They're two very different fly halves. But you also want someone that's going to take it by the scruff of the neck. And Pollard will still be there for the time being, but at some point you need to look for the future. And who's the next long-term 10? It's why I'm excited to see if Masuku, how much of an opportunity he gets, and if he takes that opportunity and what he looks like in that role. So I'll leave it there. The other thing as well that always strikes me actually with the Boks team is how players come from all over, which you have it with different teams to a degree, but there's a whole host of players they have playing in Japan. They've got players coming from the Gallagher Premiership. They've obviously got loads in the URC with the South African team. So yeah, that's always an interesting thing for me. I think particularly the Japanese players, just because the question is always, what is the standard of that league? I think it's great for them because it's not as intense as some of the schedules they get playing either in Europe or playing for South African teams in the URC. So I think it could work out well, but there are a number of players that are coming over from the Japanese league to see kind of where they are. For me, is really intriguing as well. And actually, maybe they are the kind of players that we'll see a lot in that test against Wales to give them game time and to get a better feeling of where they are. Those are my general thoughts. Springbok squad announcement, the Bulls players still to come in as well. And could we see someone like a Tyrone Green come in as well? I'm just not sure. But maybe, as I say, up in this neck of the woods, he's rated incredibly highly indeed. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below. Appreciate you watching the video. See you in the next one.